I went into this movie with almost no attachment to He-Man, and somehow I came out feeling offended on behalf of the people who actually care about this franchise. I never watched the show, I never read the comics, I never even saw the 1987 movie. I watched this on a whim because I'd heard that despite the box office looking rough, it was at least a fun time. And to be fair, there are stretches where it is a fun time. There are action scenes that had me engaged. There are performances that almost sell it. There are even a few moments where you can see the better movie trapped underneath all the nervous jokes and self-conscious writing. But that's also what makes this movie so frustrating. This is a He-Man movie made by people who are embarrassed to be making a He-Man movie. It's not that the premise is too silly to work, it's that the movie itself seems convinced the premise is too silly to work. So it keeps stopping to make sure you know that it's in on the joke. It wants the built-in audience, but it also wants distance from everything that audience enjoys. It wants to use He-Man while constantly rolling its eyes at He-Man. And after a while, that starts to just feel insulting. Instead of giving us a movie where He-Man is He-Man, where this mythic, ridiculous, and colorful fantasy hero gets to kick ass and be treated like he matters, we get this half-baked origin story where Prince Adam spends most of the runtime being talked down to, humiliated, corrected, mocked, and written like a bumbling Quirkchungus weirdo. Even when he finally says the iconic words and becomes the strongest man in the universe, the movie still can't fully let him be cool. It still has to undercut him. It still has to wink at the audience like, don't worry guys, we know this is dumb too. That kind of writing gets exhausting. There's a difference between having a sense of humor about a fantasy world and treating the fantasy world like it's beneath you. He-Man is inherently goofy, of course it is. A blonde warrior with a magic sword fighting a skull-faced villain in a world full of characters with names like Fisto and Ram Man isn't exactly gritty realism. But that doesn't mean the movie has to be ashamed of it. The entire job of an adaptation like this is to take the thing that people already love and show a wider audience why it works. Instead, this movie acts like the thing people love is the problem. You see it most clearly with the attitude towards the names of these characters. Ram Man is here, Fisto is here, Kringer is here. The movie brings in these recognizable characters, so if you're a fan, you probably get that little moment of, okay, cool, you know, they actually included them. But then the movie immediately starts making the same joke over and over again about how stupid their names are. Fisto, get it, right? Fisting, that's hilarious. Groundbreaking stuff, guys. And it's not just one joke, it's the attitude behind the joke. The movie keeps pointing at the original material and laughing at it like that's automatically clever. But if your entire punchline is this thing from the source material sounds dumb, then congratulations, you successfully made fun of the franchise you were hired to adapt. Great work, bro. The in-universe explanation makes it even weirder. Prince Adam apparently came up with these names when he was a kid, and for some reason as an adult, he still calls these people by his old fake names like they're supposed to know he's talking about them. That could maybe be funny once, but the movie leans on it so hard that it feels less like a character quirk and more like the writers trying to apologize for the existence of He-Man lore. Even the name He-Man gets turned into a joke at the end. They ask Adam if he came up with a name for himself. He says He-Man, and everyone starts laughing because it's redundant or silly or whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking, why are you working on a He-Man movie if the name He-Man is too embarrassing for you? At some point, you have to take the thing seriously enough for the audience to take it seriously. That doesn't mean no jokes, that doesn't mean no fun. It means you can't build your whole movie around a hero and then spend 2 hours acting like his basic existence is cringe. Imagine if the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie had been made with this attitude. Imagine if every 5 minutes someone stopped to say, wait, spider powers? That's stupid. He shoots webs? Disgusting. He calls himself Spider-Man? Isn't that dumb and childish? It would get exhausting. Spider-Man worked because the people making that movie understood what made the character special, and they also understood the emotion underneath that fantasy premise. They cared enough about the character to let him be sincere. This movie almost never gives He-Man that same respect. And again, I'm saying this as someone who is not a He-Man fan. I don't have childhood memories attached to this. I'm not sitting here mad because the belt buckle is wrong or because some deep cut lore detail got changed. I'm responding to what the movie itself is doing, and what it's doing is constantly refusing to let its own hero become compelling. From what I understand about He-Man just through cultural osmosis, he's supposed to be a powerful, stoic, masculine, confident, heroic, and larger than life figure. That may be simple, but simple doesn't mean it's shallow. Characters like Optimus Prime can be simple. Superman can be simple. A character can be noble and direct and still be inspiring, and you can still tell complete, compelling stories with them. Here, Adam is written like the movie is terrified of letting him have that energy for more than 30 seconds. He struggles to hold eye contact, he can barely carry a conversation without turning into an awkward mess. He gets treated like a shell of a man for most of the movie. And because this is modern franchise writing, that's apparently what counts as a fresh take on the character. The frustrating part is that the movie seems to know what He-Man should feel like, because every now and then it accidentally becomes good. There's a sequence where He-Man's father is being held prisoner, and Skeletor taunts him into a confrontation. Adam tells the crew that they need to go rescue him, and for the first time in the entire movie, he actually stands up for himself. He makes a decision, he holds to it, he doesn't stumble through it, he doesn't wait for everyone else to approve it, and when Teela argues against him, he shuts it down quickly. And Teela, she is given a lot of the qualities that you'd expect He-Man to have. She's capable, she's stoic, she's confident, she carries herself like she's the only adult in the room. It's funny how the movie is perfectly comfortable giving those traits to her, but when He-Man is supposed to display them, it's treated like some dangerous, outdated thing that needs to be softened or undercut by jokes. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, though, definitely not part of a pattern in any way. But then they go to rescue his father, and suddenly, for a few minutes, the movie locks in. The fight between He-Man and Skeletor's minions actually has energy. Daniel Pemberton's score kicks in, the action gets bigger, and you can feel the movie brushing up against the version of itself it should have been the whole time. A sincere fantasy adventure, a muscular, colorful, slightly ridiculous fantasy action movie that knows exactly what it is and commits. That scene is the clearest evidence that this didn't have to be a disaster. Because when He-Man is allowed to move like He-Man, when the music swells, when the sword is out, when the villains are closing in, the movie suddenly has a pulse. You can see the appeal. You can understand why this character has lasted as long as it has. You can understand how this world could work on screen. Then the movie immediately undercuts it again. The rescue attempt fails. He-Man gets imprisoned with his allies, and he tries to give an inspirational speech. This should be the perfect moment for the character. He's lost, his friends are beaten, the mission has gone wrong. This is where a heroic figure finds the words that makes everyone believe again. But instead, the speech is awkward, it's cringy, and it's played more for laughs. And I'm not saying every inspirational speech has to be Shakespeare. I'm not even saying it has to be completely straight-faced. But I remember being a kid watching Optimus Prime give speeches that made me want to run through a wall. That kind of sincerity used to be allowed. Heroes used to be able to speak with conviction without the movie getting nervous and throwing in a joke to protect itself. Now every big emotional moment has to be wrapped in Marvel-adjacent dialogue. Someone has to quip. Someone has to point out how awkward the moment is. Someone has to deflate the tension before the audience can feel anything too strongly. It's like modern writers are terrified of sincerity because sincerity requires commitment, and commitment means you might look uncool. There is nothing wrong with an unrealistic premise being played genuinely. Fantasy does not become smarter when every character acts like they're above it. A magical sword, a skull villain, a warrior prince, none of that needs an apology. The audience already bought a ticket to a movie about He-Man. They know what they signed up for. You don't have to keep reassuring them that you also think it's silly. That constant insecurity drains the movie. Even Skeletor, who I actually kind of enjoyed as a character, gets hit with this problem too. The movie lets him be theatrical and evil, and for a while that works. A villain like Skeletor doesn't need to be morally complicated to be entertaining. Sometimes the appeal is that he's just evil. He wants power, he wants domination, he enjoys being a villain. That can work if the movie has the confidence to embrace it. But even there, the script has to comment on itself. Skeletor says out loud that he's a villain and there's no good in him. He-Man suggests there has to be more to his motivations than that, and Teela jokes that of course it's that simple. He has a skull for a head. Like again, the movie can't just let the idea exist. A villain being purely evil is not automatically bad writing. Some of the most memorable villains in fantasy and adventure stories are compelling because they are direct, forceful, stylish, and dangerous. Not every antagonist needs a tragic backstory. Not every villain needs a morally gray explanation. Sometimes the point is that evil is real, it has a face, and the hero has to stand against it. But this movie treats simplicity like something it has to apologize for. And that's the larger issue with the whole thing. It wants to have old school heroism, but it doesn't trust old school heroism. It wants the old school fans, but it keeps mocking the stuff those fans came to see. It wants the colorful names and the big fantasy stakes, but it also wants to sit in the back of the room making jokes about how dumb everything is. That's not confidence, that's insecurity dressed up as cleverness. And the annoying part is, I didn't hate watching it. That's what makes this one so irritating. If it were just bad, whatever, move on. But there are flashes where you can see a good He-Man movie trying to break through. The action scenes are pretty good. The brief moment where Adam actually leads is compelling. The energy of its villain is great, and when the movie stops over-explaining everything, it's actually quite fun. And the score gives the whole thing a sense of scale that the script keeps trying to puncture. Those pieces are there, they just keep getting buried under this need to deconstruct, deflate, and mock. When you adapt a beloved franchise, the bare minimum is believing there is a reason people loved it in the first place. You don't have to copy every detail. You don't have to make an 80s timepiece. You can modernize, restructure, deepen, streamline, whatever you want. But if the foundation of your adaptation is embarrassment, the audience will feel that. Fans can feel when the movie is laughing with them. They can also feel when it's laughing at them. This movie spends too much time laughing at them. And for a franchise like He-Man, that's especially stupid. Because the whole appeal is the sincerity. The power fantasy, that heroic image, the bright, weird, over-the-top world where a guy raises a sword, says the magic words, and you become something larger than yourself. That is not a flaw that you need to fix. That's the thing you're supposed to sell. If the writers thought He-Man was too silly to take seriously, they should have written something else. Because a real He-Man movie would make you understand why that name matters. It should make the transformation feel powerful. It should make the hero feel like someone worth following. It should make the ridiculous parts feel grand instead of embarrassing. This movie had moments where it almost got there. Then it looked directly at the audience, smirked, and ruined its own magic. Anyways, let me know if you guys watched this movie and whether it worked for you more than it worked for me. Subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.
By the power of Grayskull.